This week on Motor Week, Howard Stableford on the latest Lexus, the revised LS400, the rare unveiling of an all-new Bristol, and Mike Rutherford with a trio of mud pluggers.
The relentless pursuit of perfection is how Toyota describes their approach to the Lexus LS400. It first arrived in the UK in 1989, presumably nowhere near perfect because it was given an overhaul just 3 years later. And now this is its third incarnation, slightly softer in shape, less square than before, but is it any nearer Toyota's great ambitions? Well, perfection is very much in the eye of the beholder, as we shall see. Now, I really love the front end of this car. Look at this fabulous low spoiler and this mean frown around the headlamps which says, I am a serious car, don't mess with me and I'm expensive. But things get a little bit more boring round the side. Very squared off, looks like any other sort of executive car you might find on the road, and rather mean line of chrome around here, doesn't do it for me. And I think there's a bit of an Achilles heel at the back. This long sweep of the rear windscreen makes you think that there is an enormous amount of boot space in here. Disappointing. Not quite enough space, in my opinion, for a huge executive car like this. And part of the problem is that this large rear parcel shelf simply houses the bass speaker for the audio system. Bad waste of space, in my opinion. Nevertheless, by any standards, this is an extraordinary car because despite its rather heavy exterior, inside is a world of such fantastic electronic wizardry that this isn't so much a car as a complete holiday destination. The fun and games begin as soon as you check in with your ignition key. Watch this. The steering wheel does a little welcoming jig, and the needles on the dash spark up in a very fetching way, like those Star Wars lightsabers. The seats, fully automatic, electrically controlled, and there is memory settings for 2 drivers. And of course there are all the gimmicks you'd expect in a car of this quality. For instance, the seats are also heated. There's full air conditioning through the climate control, and this is a nice feature. There's a pollution sensor too, so it automatically switches to recirc if it senses too much carbon monoxide. This screen here, don't read it, I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Another nice touch, the multi-CD player is housed in the glove box. Much more handy than having to delve about in the boot. But it's out on the road that this Epcot Centre on wheels really comes into its own, because more electronic toys make this a truly superb car to drive. There are clever touches all the way, like the heated side mirrors that dip when you're reversing to improve the view at curb level. The LS400 is powered by a 4-litre V8 engine, assisted by all sorts of state-of-the-art technology. Hydraulically controlled variable valve timing makes sure the engine gives optimum performance and efficiency whatever the driving conditions. And there's a highly sophisticated vehicle stability control system designed to make the car behave impeccably even if the driver makes a mistake whilst cornering. You can actually switch the stability control off if you prefer fewer decision makers when you're driving, but since this car has been limited to 155 miles an hour, there may be circumstances when you're grateful for it. It's powered by a 5-speed automatic transmission, and what I really like is that it changes through the gears extremely crisply. Some cars you put the foot down and there's a lag before it changes down. Not here, extremely smooth and extremely good. Oh, and whilst we're looking down here, have a look at this. Neat, eh? Somewhere to put your coffee. But I have saved my favourite toy till the end. Ladies and gentlemen, here she is.
Left turn coming up.
Yes, it's the co-pilot in the form of Navigator touchscreen satellite system. All you have to do is type in the destination address, it works out the route, and Katie Boyle talks you through it. She knows, you know. Well, this is definitely amongst the best executive cars around. Sadly, it's also amongst the many cars I can't afford. At £50,000, it's the same price and just about the same size as a small house. And although it's almost comfortable enough to move in, the big problem is the lodger inside would never help you with your shopping. Won't be long, love.
Your destination is ahead.
Well, here we are down on the farm, or to be precise, in my garden. And that's a pretty logical place to have these 3 four-wheel drive vehicles, 3 off-roaders from 3 different parts of the world. We've got the Ssangyong Korando from Korea, we've got the Daihatsu Terios from Japan, and we've got the good old-fashioned, well, perhaps not old-fashioned, but you know what I mean, the good old-fashioned Jeep Grand Cherokee 5.9. This one's built actually in Austria, although you might think of it as an American car. Completely different engines. Got a 1.3 litre in the little Terios here, 2.3 litres in the Korando, and a whopping 5.9 litre V8. I tell you, that engine, that engine is actually quite hot. I can feel the heat coming through that bonnet there. Different price ranges as well. Huge price difference between these cars, as you might expect, I suppose. Talking about 18 grand-ish for the Korando, 12.5 grand for the Terios. Interesting price for this little car. This is the surprise so far in appearance terms. And if you haven't got £40,000 in your bin, don't even think about the Grand Cherokee. Now, enough talking. Let's see how they drive. Well, this is an interesting one, the Ssangyong Korando. Ssangyong means double dragon in Korea, and Korando is an abbreviation of Korea Can Do. Can you believe that? What a terrible name for a car. But anyway, it's actually, I think, a very nice car to look at from the outside. It was designed by Professor Ken Greenlee from the Royal College of Art, probably one of Britain's most respected car designers. He's also a tutor, but what he did was went out to Seoul on a sort of day-to-day basis really, and designed this car for the Koreans because they recognise talent when they see it. And it's a shame that a bloke like that can't get a job in Britain. Anyway, that's another story. This thing has got a 2.3 litre engine, develops about 140 brake horsepower, they say. Can't believe it myself, it doesn't feel like a 140 horsepower engine to me. 103 miles an hour, 0 to 60 in 14.5 seconds. An asking price of about $17,950 for this 2.3 litre petrol version, which does of the order of 28 mpg. Looks great, like I said, not too sure about the build quality. Koreans have yet to prove themselves in that department, and I don't like this interior. Just listen to that, would you? That is 5.9 litres of V8 Detroit engine pumping away under the bonnet of this Grand Cherokee. Sorry for that less than smooth manoeuvre. This Grand Cherokee LX, the 5.9 litre version, which has just gone on sale, or about to go on sale, the most powerful off-roader in the world, probably, production off-roader anyway. And it makes anything that Range Rover or anybody else produce up in Birmingham look pretty silly, actually. This is an awesome piece of kit. 237 brake horsepower, 125 miles an hour, 0 to 60 in 7.5 seconds. Cost you about, if you haven't got 40,000 quid in your bin, don't even think about it. And don't, whatever you do, don't think about what this thing will do to the gallon, because it doesn't, well, I asked somebody, you know, what it does to the gallon, and the reply was, it drinks. It drinks something of the order of 12 mpg. Just think about that. You won't get much more than 12 miles to the gallon out of this car. But really, it's the ultimate. I mean, you know, you get what you pay for, and you pay a lot for this car, and you get probably the best off-roader in the world. Only comes in left-hand drive, unfortunately. But if I had 40 grand, it would be on my shopping list. Well, if you're wondering what that funny little noise, and it is a funny little noise. If you're wondering what it is, it's the reverse gear on this little Daihatsu Terios, which is a funny little car. And it's a funny little company, and they're funny little people at that company, believe me. I've been out to Osaka in Japan, where they make the little Daihatsu Terios, and they are a funny old lot. It's a weird old place. Most car manufacturers are in or around Tokyo. Osaka break the mold, and they're out in the sticks in Osaka, and well, they're weird. But I tell you, they might be weird, but they've come up with a great little car here. This is a 1.3 litre 16 valve engine in this Terios, 82 brake horsepower. That's powerful enough for a car like this. 91 miles per hour top speed. We've got the 0 to 60 time of around 16 seconds, and this is the good bit, I think you'll agree. £12,200 for this car, and it'll do something like 38.7 mpg. And this is the other great thing, unlike the other two cars that we've been driving today, this one has got permanent four-wheel drive. No pressing buttons, no pulling handles. It decides when there's ice on the road or snow on the road and four-wheel drive needs to come into play, and it does it all for you. And I tell you another thing that's quite incredible, considering it's so small, it's got more legroom, this car, than that Ssangyong Korando, and that's saying something, and it's less of a roly-poly ride as well. Well, here we are back on the farm. We've had a pretty amazing day driving around this place and on the surrounding roads, and it's given us a good chance to evaluate all three of these off-roaders. I mean, it's stupid to compare them and try and pick a winner and a loser out of these three, because they're in an entirely different league, all three of them, entirely different prices. So let's start with the most expensive first, the 5.9 litre V8. Remember, this is a car that has to be governed because it wants to go quicker than 125 miles an hour, and those very responsible people of Chrysler are saying, let's limit that top speed of this car and make it a little bit slower. But 125 miles an hour, quick enough for me, I can tell you. And it's got to be the best four-wheel drive vehicle in the world. What you're looking at here is the ultimate 4x4. You know, if we're talking about production vehicles available in Britain, this is better than the top of the line Range Rover, better than the top of the line anything else that's on the market. Can't go wrong with this car. And you know, an awful lot of car for quite a lot of money, it has to be said. This one, at the other end of the scale, the little Daihatsu Terios, when I first saw it, well, I wasn't too sure. It looks a bit like a hairdresser's car to me, if you know what I mean. And the more I drive it and the more I look at it, the more it appeals to me. Great little city car, great second family car, nice little 4x4 facility. It's got this interesting little feature. Beneath the luggage area there's a footwell where you can chuck in your dirty old wellies or wetsuits or whatever wet things you want to chuck under the floor of your luggage compartment. The other great little thing about this car is that it's got permanent four-wheel drive. None of this nonsense of pulling levers, as you have to with the Jeep, to put the thing into four-wheel drive, or pressing buttons or anything like that. This one decides for you when you need the four-wheel drive and when it should come into play. So, ironically, the cheapest of the lot, in many respects, has the most sophisticated four-wheel drive system. Although, don't get confused, this is not a mud plugger. This is not a serious off-roader. This is a sport utility vehicle, let's call it that, which means that it's for pretty light off-road work, unlike the Grand Cherokee, of course. This one confuses me slightly, the Ssangyong Korando. I don't know, I like the job that Ken Greenlee, my old mate Professor Ken Greenlee as he is now, sorry sir, I love the styling job he's done on this, but some lovely little touches. Look at this rear wheel and the lights and the wings and everything. Some very nice touches indeed. Don't like the driving of this car. I don't like the roly-poly effect that they allege does not exist, but when you're out driving it, let me tell you, it throws you around a little bit. What I don't like is the tacky interior of this car, and worst of all, and I hope I never see it again, that dashboard. It's got this horrible wooden dashboard that looks like my grandma's old mahogany wardrobe being chopped up and installed in a Ssangyong. Yuck.
You don't see Bristol Cars launch a new model very often. In fact, it's about as common as a Tottenham Hotspur hat-trick. But on the 14th of January, they launched this, the Blenheim 2, and Motor Week went along. The visual differences to the original Blenheim aren't immediately obvious to most, but the nose and rear wings have been cleaned up to make for a sleeker shape. The handcrafted aluminium bodywork does retain some Bristol hallmarks, such as the compartments behind the front wheel arches, which contain the spare wheel, battery and fuses. Underneath, the separate chassis is retained, but with revisions to the components attached. The wheels are further apart, for instance, to improve handling, and there are new hand-built suspension dampers which are individually adjustable. Other modifications reduce the turning circle by nearly 2 feet. The interior retains the gentleman's club ambience that you'd expect, but revised front seats improve space and comfort. The effect is enhanced by extra interior and under-bonnet soundproofing. Bristols, like Bentleys, tend to be bought by the well-heeled, who'd rather drive themselves than be chauffeured around, so most of the mods have been aimed at the driver. Sorry, Jeeves. And Bristols are narrower than most luxury competitors, so there's less chance of an expensive scrape as you thread through that traffic. Just as well, really, because the car isn't cheap, at about £120,000 on the road. We caught up with Tony Crook, formerly a racing driver, before becoming managing director of Bristol Cars in 1973, and asked him about the new car.
The car really is a full 4-seater, 4 people can sit in it. It's very elusive with a massive central chassis that gives terrific road holding and low centre of gravity. The interior of the car is quite different. In fact, it's really a new car. Very few panels are left from Blenheim 1.
So, there you have it, the new Bristol Blenheim. Now, where did I leave those keys? Oi, Jeeves! I say, Jeeves! Come back!
Following the launch of Daewoo's 3 new models late last year, nearly 2,000 people are reported to have taken test drives. From this sample, 100 were chosen to drive a Daewoo Lanos, Nubira or Laganza free for a year. Daewoo have carried out a similar survey with the previous model range and used feedback from this to judge the level of customer care. Vauxhall has been given a security award by the British Vehicle and Leasing Association for volume cars up to £25,000. With measures including integrated keyless entry control and freewheeling anti-tampered door locks, you can see where Vauxhall's investment of £75 million developing and implementing measures preventing car crime has been spent. Seat are making bold claims about their Cordoba Vario. In TDI form, they say the Vario must be the most economic station wagon you can buy. With an urban cycle figure of 67.2 mpg, we await with interest for another manufacturer to top these figures, such as the rapid development in the field of diesel engines.
Say the name Land Rover and what images spring to mind? Rugged off-road vehicles that will last a lifetime. They'll get you into and out of most things that you could ever encounter. And they're just perfect for the country girl. Most definitely not for the girl around town. Are you with me on this one? Well, a question for you. How do you account for this then? This is the Land Rover Freelander, Britain's answer to a line of Japanese lifestyle vehicles, a trend started by Toyota's RAV4 and followed up by the Honda CR-V. There are 3 versions in the Freelander range. There's this, the hardtop, which comes with a 3 or a 5-door option, and then a 2-door convertible Land Rover, a Land Rover to have fun in. There's no doubt you'll look the part in this. After all, it came from the same design team responsible for the MGF. But looks are really only part of the equation. So what's it like on the road? Up here in the cabin, the driving position is really wonderful. You've got this fabulous, commanding view of everything that's going on around you. And the whole feeling inside is one of real solidness. Everything's chunky, it's rugged, it feels extremely well built. But don't get me wrong, I have to say, it doesn't feel too boy's own or too macho. It actually, would you believe, has an interior to die for. This is the 3-door version and it's just wonderful. There's use of colour, it's nice and bright, there's these gorgeous exposed rivets, Nice bits of paintwork all over the place. I can't believe it. Land Rover have discovered a designer who realises that the style of a vehicle shouldn't go dramatically downhill the minute you open the door.
Given this was going into a sector of the market that Land Rover hadn't been in before, we wanted to create something that was thoroughly contemporary and modern, but at the same time it had to recognise its heritage through the execution of certain detail cues rather than its overall form. Some of them are obvious, other ones are quite subtle. Things like the castellations in the bonnet, the actual clamshell bonnet itself, the very upright nature of the front end, the very equal glass to body relationship, but I think most importantly the overall robustness and solidity that make it unmistakably a Land Rover.
So it turns heads when you're off doing the shopping around town, but can it hack it when the going gets tough? Obviously missing here from the inside of the Freelander are those multiple gear levers, you know, the low gear ratio set that you expect to find in a Land Rover. In this, you're left to the mercy of electronic traction control. And believe me, it works absolutely wonderfully. It's astounding what this thing can do. Sometimes there's an advantage to being first, but sometimes it's better to wait. And Land Rover have played their cards brilliantly. They've waited and they've watched as the East has moved into the market. And then they've come up with something that feels far more solid, more rugged, is without a doubt far more capable, and is also more gorgeous, both inside and out. But as they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And right now, this is mine, and I love it.